Hi, everyone. I'm Sam Valenti, and I am joined today by an outstanding sports broadcaster. He was a longtime play-by-play voice for the Arena Football League. Currently, he calls Kansas City Chiefs preseason matchups. In fact, he recently filled in for Mitch Holthus, calling Chiefs versus Packers on the radio. He's been on NFL Network. He's been on the Tennis Channel. He's worked the Olympics for NBC and so much more. Truly one of the best in the business, the great Ari Wolfe. Ari, such an honor to be talking with you today.
You're too kind. I look forward to this. We've got lots of ground to cover, but yeah, it's been a great run. I've treasured the career I've had. Everybody's career is different, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you do with yours.
Well, thank you so much, Ari. Yeah, I appreciate it. And like I said, just truly an honor to be talking with you. So first off, just got to ask, like I mentioned, you called that Chiefs Packers game, huge game for Jordan Love that night. What was it like calling that game?
Well, it was a unique experience, Sam, because I started my career purely in radio. And I think that if you're looking at play by play, the purest play by play is always going to be radio because I've done a ton of TV, and TV, everyone can see what's happening. So you're just there to kind of add a little bit. With radio play by play, you're everything, right? You're your eyes, the ears, the smells, everything that's going on. So I had not called a game on radio in 15 years. I got the call last Friday and they said, "Hey, Mitch is sick. Can you get to Green Bay?" And I thought, well, I'm very familiar with the Chiefs, having done their preseason. Obviously, I follow the NFL very closely. And it was an amazing experience to go to Lambeau Field for Sunday Night Football to watch the Chiefs and the Packers. It kind of blew my mind. It was like I was a kid again doing it for the first time because the amount of detail you need to do NFL play-by-play on radio, it took a level of focus and attention that you just don't require on television. And so I was so engaged that at the end of the game, actually, I was pretty emotionally crushed. I wanted the Chiefs to win. Obviously, I work with them. I have relationships with them. But it was an amazing thing to see sort of Jordan Love come of age in a game against, like, the measuring stick for quarterbacks is Patrick Mahomes, right? To see Jordan Love going toe to toe, in a Sunday night game with the whole league watching, an incredible atmosphere, 80,000 people. So it was, for me, it was such a special moment. I grew up in Madison, Wisconsin, just a little guy there. And the thought that I'd be ever calling an NFL game at Lambeau Field on a Sunday night, the Chiefs, it was just too cool. So it was great. It was a great football game. It had a great ending for the Packers, but it truly brought me back to my original love, and that's doing radio play by play.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, gosh, calling a game at Lambeau Field, I mean, that's just one of those magical moments that you will remember forever, man.
Yeah, and that's why I was just so heartbroken because I sort of wanted selfishly to have like a Mahomes moment, right? They three different times they had the ball with either a chance to take the lead or in the last drive to potentially tie with a touchdown to two. And selfishly, I just wanted Mahomes to have one of those magical moments, and I would get to be on the call because one thing that you learn after you've been in football for a long time, the voice of record of every game is the play-by-play announcer for the team. So if it's a Packers highlight, you'll hear Wayne Larrabee. If most of the time with the Chiefs, you hear Mitch Holthus. So that was my one game where had Mahomes had like a signature moment or a play, it would have been my call that we would have heard, for years and years to come. So I was a little bit bummed at the end that there wasn't that signature moment, but to be at Lambeau Field, which you could make a strong case is the coolest stadium in the NFL. It may not have all the bells and whistles of AT&T in Dallas or SoFi in LA, but it's got the tradition, it's got the history. So it was really cool. As you said, it'll be something I'll never forget. I'll certainly always treasure it. But a little part of me does wish the Chiefs would have won, but it was still an amazing night.
Yes, yes, for sure. And then of course, just kind of talking a little bit more about the Chiefs. I'm sure you saw that that very that crazy Chiefs Bills game, with that crazy ending. And as everyone saw, Mahomes pretty heated at the refs. Kansas City is now 8-5. Just from your perspective, what do you think the Chiefs need to do now to just kind of get back on track, get the train rolling again?
Well, look, their losses have been very close losses, and they've been losses that they're usually games that they're used to winning, that they're used to finding a way late in games. Mahomes finds a way. Look, at the end of the day, when they look back on this season, I think that the way they're managing the salary cap, because look, to stay competitive near the top of the NFL, you have to manage the cap. You've got to draft well. You've got to be very selective in free agency. I think that they didn't put as many resources in the wide receiver position. If you look from a salary cap perspective, there's not a guy in the receiver room who's been in the league for more than 2 years. I think that they thought that how great Mahomes is and how great Kelsey is, that would be enough to carry the receivers. But I think the receivers have unfortunately a little bit underachieved. So I think right now someone has to emerge from that group. Is it Rashee Rice, who's shined at times? But I think that they're still searching for their identity at the wide receiver position. And I think we saw against Buffalo, when you don't have Isaiah Pacheco to really do some of the dirty work in the run game, I think that their offense, it just didn't have as many resources as we're used to, where he has so many different playmakers. Remember, it was just 2 years ago he had Tyreek Hill, who to me is still the most dangerous wide receiver in the NFL. So it's a different team. I trust Andy Reid that he'll get the most out of this group. And we're going to see, it looks like Patrick Mahomes on the road in the playoffs, and we've never seen that. And, I don't think that the Chiefs shy away from thinking they can win on the road, but it'll be a new challenge. And look, defending in the NFL is really hard. There's a reason it hasn't happened since the Patriots in the early 2000s. So it's one of the hardest things to do in sports. I think the Chiefs, this is really a gut check moment right now. Where is this season going to go? They're 8-5, and I think everything's still in front of them. But that number one seed, I think, is going to be very hard to get given the Ravens' schedule. And then I'm a little surprised the Dolphins lost last night. So that does help the Chiefs a little bit. But I think the number one thing for the Chiefs is some receivers have to step up their play and make plays for their quarterback.
Yep, absolutely. I 100% agree with that. So now I kind of want to get into your background now. Of course, as you mentioned, you grew up in Madison, Wisconsin. So just what are your earliest memories of watching sports? And then from there, how did you get interested in wanting to go into broadcasting?
Well, it's actually very clear. So when we moved to Madison, I was just 5. And a couple of years later, a buddy of mine, Dave Finch, who's still one of my best friends, he moved to Madison. We became friends. And his parents had tickets to the field house to UW men's basketball game. And at that time, my mom really wasn't a sports fan yet. So it was David's parents. They would have 4 tickets. And David, at that time, his younger brother wouldn't go to the game. So I went with their family. So I started going regularly to watch UW basketball. And I thought it was the coolest thing ever. I mean, the biggest moment we had was Wisconsin played Michigan State the year that Magic Johnson and Michigan State won it all. But in the last regular season game of the year, Michigan State played at Wisconsin, and Wisconsin beat them 83-81 on a 50-foot shot at the buzzer that went in off the board by Wes Matthews Sr. I don't know if you know Wes Matthews Jr., who's still in the NBA. So it was like this moment. I was like, sports is the greatest thing ever. Like, this is all I ever want to do. And I remained a Philadelphia sports fan because I was originally from there. And they were really fortunate. They had some of the best radio announcers. They still have Merrill Reese, who's the voice of the Eagles. He's in his 40-something year. And a guy who's since passed, Harry Callis, who was one of the original voices of the Phillies. So I grew up hearing these guys, and I remember thinking, like, that's got to be the best job in the world to, like, talk about the teams that I love. But how do you do such a thing? So I actually went to undergraduate at Emory University in Atlanta, and I had a couple of internships working as like a runner during NFL games at the old Atlanta Fulton County Stadium when the Falcons had home games. And then I also worked at CNN, where I was a logger of highlights. And funny enough, both experiences weren't very good. I was a little chicken. I thought the TV and everything was just too much for me. It was too intense. Like, I was in the truck at an NFL game and F-bombs were flying and people were yelling at each other. And then as soon as the game was over, they were all hugging it out. And I just thought, like, maybe I'm not wired for this. So when I got done with Emory, my mom is a professor at the University of Wisconsin. We had this fateful meal where I was going to become an educator. I was going to become like a high school history coach. And then I wanted to be a coach for both soccer and tennis. And we had this dinner, and she's like, well, if you didn't have to worry about money, what would you do? And I said, well, I'd be, a radio sports play-by-play announcer. And she's like, well, why don't you try doing that first? She's like, you could become a teacher at 30. Why don't you, while you're in your 20s, give this thing a shot? So starting the next day, instead of going to NYU to get my master's in education, I ended up going to the University of Southern California to their Annenberg School, got my master's in broadcast journalism. And while I was there, the best part was I did student radio for USC football, men's basketball, and baseball. So I kind of got a taste for it. And then I just was like, this is what I'm going to do. Even if I'm not successful, I was like, I would rather be happy doing something that I love every day. And so, yeah, it all started. My first job was in independent baseball in a league called the Northeast League. It was the lowest level of baseball to be considered professional. It was in Lynn, Massachusetts. They were called the Massachusetts Mad Dogs. And I had to work in the front office by day. And then at 4 p.m., they would let me go to the ballpark. And even though the money was lousy, the food was terrible, the places we went was awful, I thought this is the best gig ever. So that's how it all got started. But there were definitely some, major moments in my career that kind of helped propel me, because it takes a little bit of luck, right? You have to meet somebody along the way who's like, that guy's got it. And for me, that guy was Ron Jaworski, because I went to Philadelphia in 2004 to work for their brand new arena football team, the Soul. And Jaworski was the team president. Well, he liked my work so much that the following fall, the Eagles needed a preseason announcer for their TV games. And Ron Jaworski was our analyst. And he went to bat for me, and I got the gig. So that was like a life-changing moment, because like Ron Jaworski decided, I like Ari. I want him to be successful. And my whole career, frankly, I look back on that moment. That was a huge springboard to me to give me credibility at the highest level of football. So, anybody who wants to pursue this, work super hard, build a relationship, and hopefully somewhere along the way, someone who's got more juice than you do says, I think I like this guy. And in that case, Ron Jaworski was like a father figure to me, and we're still very close to this day.
Man, I tell you this, it's those connections, that you make along the way that are just so important, and it's, no, and honestly, here's what I think. I think it's important just, when you're a broadcaster, just to make connections with everyone. I mean, it's like, of course, it's important to make connections with like players, coaches, all that, but just even just making connections with just anyone around the team, like people working in, training staff, equipment, stuff like that. Just
Absolutely. The support
connections with
staff people
anyone.
are critical, right? They do so much of the dirty work that nobody appreciates. I think one of the things that was most important for me developing as a broadcaster was working for teams where I was their radio announcer. I did Division II college basketball for 4 years in Albany. I did arena football in Albany and Philly. So when you travel with a team and you become close with the support staff, with the coaches, players, and their families, you realize when you're calling the game, you're never going to take a shot at somebody because today wasn't their best day, because you realize that they have a family. Those are real people. It's not just a name on on a nameplate on the back of the jersey. They're real people. So I think one of the things that I'm most proud of in my career is that I try to lift everybody up. I'm never, if you listen to me, I'm never critical, really. I might say today wasn't your day, but I'll never say they were unprepared, they didn't work hard enough, they were out coached. Because I think if you respect the sport and you respect the people working in it, those are the relationships that make it all special. Because I'm telling you, you're a young guy, it's about the journey. It is 100% not about the destination. In fact, I would say the journey. So when I started to do national stuff, those are the memories I treasure way more than being a neutral party showing up for a network where you're not really connected to anybody in the game. You just want to have a clean broadcast. So I think that the intimacy of being a radio announcer, and I'll give you one example. This is my favorite story. So I'm working in Albany. It's my second year at the College of St. Rose. I traveled on the bus with the team. It was super low rent. We had a game in Albany, and we drove all the way to Southampton, which is like the eastern tip of Long Island. It's a good 4.5-hour bus ride. So we're out there. It's the dead of winter. Let's call it the first week of February. And in the first half of the game, we had a lot of foul trouble, and a senior walk-on ended up playing about 12 minutes in the game. And it was by far his biggest contribution in the game. Let's say he had 10 points and 4 rebounds, knocked down a couple of key free throws late. So it's great. We get on the bus, we go home. At the very next game, I'm getting ready. It's a home game. And all of a sudden, I see the players' parents walking up, and they've got a plate of cupcakes. And they told me that they lived 40 minutes outside the radio range of our radio station doing the games. They drove to where they could get the signal. They sat in a parked car in a freezing parking lot to listen to the game. And they were like, it was the most meaningful 30 minutes of our lives to hear how excited you were for our son. So we just wanted to come and thank you. And the mom had tears in her eyes. And I thought, this is what it's all about. This is why I do this. Because if you treat every event you do like somebody's Super Bowl, because it is, right? It doesn't matter if it's a 12-year-old, Little League game, or it's the Final Four of the Super Bowl. For the people whose kids are involved, it means everything to them. And I think very early, I learned the kind of impact I could have on people's lives by telling the stories of their families in these games. And I tell this story literally almost every time I talk to someone like you, because to me, it illustrates the intimacy and how much you can learn by just being a caring, positive person that's trying to lift up some senior walk-on who at the time I'm just doing my job. And then I realized what an impact it had on his family and frankly, his teammates and the whole team. Everyone was so excited.
Wow, that's awesome. I mean, that is a truly amazing story. And I mean, that's, when you're calling a game, that's the most important thing is the audience. And it doesn't matter, no, it doesn't matter if it's like a million people, it doesn't matter if it's just two people. No, what matters
Right. You got
is
to treat
that.
them all the same because to that person that day, that's what means everything. And I think that those were things that, you couldn't have predicted would be life experiences I would have had. Who knows? I could have been with teams that had a jerk for a coach and had players that really weren't good kids. And I would have had a whole different experience, but that's not what happened. I feel incredibly fortunate. It seemed like everywhere I went, I made these incredible connections with people associated with the team, the players on the team. I mean, the beauty of some parts of social media for me is that I still follow guys who played on that team. That was in 1998. It was on that basketball team, and I still see what they're doing with their kids. Their kids play basketball now, and just it's a relationship driven business. And if you embrace that part of it, that's where the money's great if you make it. Opportunities are great, but those big life moments where you sharing something that's really important to someone, I mean, that to me is what makes it all worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, just going back to your time at Annenberg, with USC, you got to call, of course, many USC sports events. I just want to ask, what would you say are your fondest memories of your time at USC? And then what would you say are the most valuable things that you learned during your time there?
Well, I think one thing that's important for me to note, and I don't want to discredit Annenberg or USC because it's been deeply impactful in my career, but you don't need a degree to follow this career path. If you just created a reel, even with your own phone, and you set it up, people don't really care where you went to school. So I just want that to be clear to anyone who ever see this, that it's great to have a degree in broadcast journalism, and I'm proud of it, but it's not required. If you're talented and you have an ability to connect with people when you're describing a game, you don't need to have a degree in it. You really don't. It never comes up. I mean, in a situation like this, you'll bring it up because you're looking at my Wikipedia page or something, so you see that I went to USC. In my career, it's probably been a decade since anybody's even referenced that I went to Annenberg. So I just want people who think that this is not something they can obtain in their life. They can't. You do not need a degree in it. But going to why it was effective for me was definitely the experience of not just doing the play-by-play. I was actually on an afternoon talk show. It was called Blackjack and the Wolf Attack. And me and this guy, Tyler, just hit it off. Like, we like talking sports together. And it gave me an appreciation of the depth of knowledge that I needed because we covered all sports. It wasn't just USC stuff. And we did, it was like a 2-hour drive time show. I mean, I don't know if 30 people were listening, outside of other people worked for the student radio station. But it was a great experience. And I think I learned very quickly, going to press conferences with John Robinson at USC and having the courage to ask a question and feeling like he respected me. So I think it gave me an opportunity to see if I could fit in and feel like it was someplace where I had something to offer. And I think very quickly, my confidence that I don't know, I always felt like when I watch a game, like my insights are pretty good. I trusted myself. And I think any young person, don't be scared to think that just because you haven't done it as long as someone or not on as high a profile event, trust what you know, trust what you see, because that's what we're getting paid for, right? Is they want to hear what I think about what's going on in the game. So I think at USC, I started to trust myself that what I had to say, people wanted to hear. But, it was a pretty daunting process to how do you jump in the job market? I was in LA, it's the number 2 market. It wasn't like I had peers who wanted to work behind the scenes who were going to stay in LA. I knew that I had to go pay my dues. And the goal was to come back to LA within 10 years. It took me 11 years. But being in all those little markets and having all those kinds of stories I was just sharing with you, I think that's what makes you a better broadcaster is the life experience. Nothing was handed to me. I had to go out and earn it. In fact, when I finally came back to LA, I didn't have a job here. I just decided no one was going to hire me in LA if I didn't move here. So I bet on myself. I was living in Philadelphia. It was my dog at the time, my clothes, my computer, and my car. And I drove across America with a 5-month plan to see if I could break into Los Angeles. Well, during that 5-month time, the Arena Football League went out of business. I remember the first time that happened after the 2008 season, they actually just voted to play no games. So it wasn't officially went dark, but they just had a 0-game schedule. So there was no reason for me to come back to Philadelphia. There was no gig to come back to. So then my 5 months, I'm still in the same condo that I came into 15 years ago. So part of that is this life happened. But I think all of it comes back to believing in yourself and thinking of the big picture that you're going to invest in you, bet on you that you can do something that you think is amazing. Because if you're passionate about something, people are going to, I think, hopefully want to hear what you have to say. So one of my big messages when I talk to young people is bet on yourself, because nobody else is likely to. So USC sort of gave me the tools and the understanding to know that I could do this. And then when I got out there, it gave me something to dream about. And the dream was to be able to live in Southern California, make a living as a sports broadcaster. And then ultimately, I wanted to have a family. I met my wife here when I came back here. We have a couple of kids, and, it's all worked out really well. But it's not that there weren't a lot of points along the way where there wasn't a lot of uncertainty. It's not a career path for someone who's insecure or has thin skin or wants to know that they're going to have a stable job for like 20 years, because this is not the nature of it. I've lost more gigs because, somebody lost the rights to something or a network went out of business. So you have to kind of be thick-skinned. You have to know that it's going to be a bumpy ride at times. But when you're there at an event and it's a good event and there's all the emotion of sports, it's the best gig going. I mean, anybody, I would say if you want to try it, you should definitely go for it, because I can't imagine having like a regular job now. If somebody told me I had to go work 9 to 5 and work in a traditional job, I think I'd be crushed. So I'm hoping I don't mess it up and they'll let me keep talking for a little bit longer.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's a it's a roller coaster of an industry. No, it's
Yeah.
not easy. It's a no. There's like highs and lows along the way, but honestly, man, it's those moments. Like I mentioned at the beginning, where you're getting to call a game on radio at Lambeau freaking Field. It's those moments that make just everything worth it.
Yeah, and look, it was not easy getting there, and it was not easy leaving. Leaving Lambeau. Because the whole team was traveling back to Kansas City on the team plane, whereas I was coming back to LA. And I won't get into the gory details, but let's just say the fans were a little wasted, a little unruly at around midnight outside of Lambeau Field. But I eventually got back. But yeah, you just feel so fortunate. I guess the thing that my biggest takeaway from doing that game was that the Chiefs trusted me to do it. Right? Like doing their preseason games is great. Trent Green is an amazing guy. I love doing games with him. Kimmy Checks is on it. Matt McMullen. We have a great team. We all get along great. But, the regular season is more important. And the radio guy is the voice of the team. So for them to say, Ari, we want you to come and be our play-by-play guy, it definitely meant a lot to me. And I'm still something I'm kind of still processing. But those are the moments that you think to yourself, whatever I've been doing, I must be doing something right for them to trust me to put me on such a big game and such a big moment.
Yes, for sure. So now I want to kind of get into your time that you spent for many years calling arena football games. So how did you first get involved with the AFL?
Well, funny, I was telling you about that Division II college basketball program. So that season started in October, was when the kids reported, and I was going to practice every day. Well, interestingly enough, the equipment manager for this Division II college basketball program was also the equipment manager for the Albany Firebirds. And the arena teams and that schedule started in April. So between October and April, I was doing these basketball games, and the equipment manager says, I think you're pretty good. Like, we're looking for someone to replace our guy who left. Would you be interested in arena football? And here's the crazy part. I went 2 years to USC. During the summer in between, there was a sportscasters camp that was really for kids. I was the oldest person there. I think I was 26 at the time, and the next youngest person was like 15. But what I was able to do while I was there is they let me call an Angels game. It was the Angels Mariners. I remember Alex Rodriguez was in the game. I got to do NBA Summer League at the Long Beach Pyramid. And funny enough, I got to do an Anaheim Piranhas arena game in the summer of 1996. So when I got to Albany and the equipment manager's like, would you want to maybe see if you could get a job at the Arena League? I was like, I actually have a tape. Like, I actually have called an arena game, which I think to them like blew their minds. This random guy who moved to Albany had already done, again, it was just a demo tape, but I'd done it. So the general manager there, Joe Hennessy, he's now since passed, he sort of changed my life. He hired me to be the radio voice of the Albany Firebirds. And the timing, I got so lucky. My second year, they won the Arena Bowl in Albany. It is still to date in Albany, I think, the biggest sports moment they've ever had. And that team was celebrated at the 25-year anniversary of the Arena Football League as the greatest arena team of all time. And I just happened to be there. It was just my second year. So all these incredible legends like Eddie Brown and Mike Daly, I was there for every second of that championship year. So I spent 3 years there in Albany, and then the team moved to Indianapolis. And I didn't want to give up my job. So I moved to Indianapolis. And it's not like they gave me a bunch of money, but I was like, we won a title, 2 seasons before we left. So then I went to Indiana, and being in Indianapolis kind of also opened up some other things. But as soon as I knew that the thing in Indianapolis, I didn't think had long term for me to work there. When Philadelphia announced they were going to have an arena team, I went all in. Like I just went all in. I was like, I'm originally from Philadelphia. I know more about arena football than their whole organization will. Like I've already been in it for 6 years. So that was a huge moment. So the general manager who hired me in Albany was the general manager in Philadelphia the first year. So he brought me into Albany, into Indianapolis, and to Philadelphia. So again, finding someone who's like, that's my guy. And so Joe Hennessy, bless his heart, he was the guy who believed in me. And then once I started doing national games for arena football, that was to me the greatest compliment I ever got was people like, you're the Al Michaels of the arena league. And I'm like, I mean, that's as great a compliment as you can get. And I liked being the guy. I wanted to be on the arena bowls. I thought that, I wouldn't say this about any other sport. I thought I was the best person for the job because of I went to practice every day at every team I was with. Coaches let me sit in on meetings. I really knew the game and I knew all the people. So that was an amazing experience and that got me into the NFL Network. So the NFL Network decided to cover arena football in the 2010 season. And that was the year I got hired there. And Mike Mayock, who I was doing the Vikings preseason with at the time, went to the bosses and says, look, we're getting arena football. This guy is coming, whether you hire him or not. And because of Mike Mayock, I got hired to do arena football and news updates at NFL Network, which is, again, a career-changing moment. All of a sudden, I'm on NFL Network, and that was the start of a long run there. So, arena football had everything to do really with a lot of my success because it was the catalyst that got me, doing NFL preseason, and it was the catalyst to get me in at the NFL Network.
Yeah, absolutely.
Arena football is near and dear to my heart, and I really hope that the revamped league that starts. I hope it has great success because I really love the sport of arena football, and I hope that they go back to the rules that I love, where it was Iron Man football. Because to me, what made arena football unique was seeing a receiver and a DB in one series. This guy's a receiver, and then the next series, this guy's a receiver. Because coaches really had to coach then. You'd take a player who was a wide receiver in college, you'd have to teach him how to play DB. Or if they were an offensive lineman, you have to teach them how to rush the passer. So the amount of coaching that along was different. And then when John Elway was an owner, he thought to make the players better for the NFL, they did away with the Iron Man. And I thought that was the beginning of the league just wasn't what it was. Because I think if you're going to play on such a small field, you have to have something else that makes it unique, not just outdoor football on a little field. So I don't know the exact rules that the revamped league is going to come back with, but my biggest hope is that they bring back Iron Man football.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I just hope that this new AFL is a success, baby, because ever since, ever since 2019 when it had that last game, it was the soul and the empire in that last Arena Bowl, man. I've been missing it, and I love, obviously being in Arizona, I get to watch Rattlers games in the indoor football league, and that's nice and all. I like the IFL. I like the NAL as well. Just something about the AFL, man. Like I've been missing that because that's always going to be number one in my heart.
Well, really, because AFL is the best brand of indoor football we've ever seen. I don't think anyone could argue that the arena football at its best, it was the best. It had the best talent. I think it had the best product. At one time we were in 19 cities, and I think at least 6 of them were co-owned by NFL teams. So the league got to a point where it was like, is it going to be like a big deal in America? And then, I really blame John Elway and John Bon Jovi for the demise of the league when it went under at the end of the 2008 season. I think that they weren't committed to the long haul. And I think when they realized that they weren't making money from it, they immediately quit on it. And, I hold them both accountable to that. I think if you ask a lot of arena people, you would not get a nice word said about either one of those guys because they had the ability, given their stature and their prominence in football, that had they totally committed to the game, I think the Arena League would have never gone through a lot of the trials that it's been through. To me, that was its greatest disappointment because it was at this critical moment. The games were on ESPN. The Arena Bowl, we had just played the 2008 Arena Bowl. The Soul had beaten San Jose. It was this magical moment. And then as soon as sort of the financials came in, all the NFL owners bailed. And then that really changed everything. And the league went into a lot of debt and it went out of business and it's come back a couple of times. I hope that the people doing it now are in it for the long haul because you're going to need a lot of resources before any money comes back. You've got 16 teams. We've talked about the support staff. You've got all those people who need to make money before you sell a single ticket. So I just hope that they're looking at this thing with like a 5 and a 10-year plan, because if they're expecting to make money in the first couple of years, at least to date, that has never been the Arena Football League. And I just hope that the people who are behind it love it as much as I do, and that they'll treat it with the respect and love it deserves, because it has a place in American sports. People love football, and it's during a time of year when there isn't really any football. I know that now we're gonna have the XFL come out with the USFL. That's a different game, right? That's the outdoor game. The arena game to me was super special, is that families could afford to bring their kids, right? For $100, you could bring your kids to a Rattlers game and they could eat, park, and have good seats. You can't really do that in any professional sport. So I just hope that the Arena League remembers what it's about, and that is making sure that families who don't have a lot of means have an opportunity to bring their kids to professional sports.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. No, just all the AFL games I've been to, I remember seeing just all these families. It was, and that was the big thing about it was fun for the whole family, man. And but it's funny
And
that
like the players were accessible, right? The players would
yeah.
sign autographs on the field after the game. That doesn't happen in an NFL game, right? That
Mm.
doesn't happen in an NBA game. So it was the intimacy between the players and coaches and staff with their local markets. I mean, we go out in Albany and we felt like we were the New York Yankees. Like everybody loved us because everybody made time for the fans. What was different? If you're an NFL player and you're making $10 million a year, you don't really have a lot in common with a fan who can only afford $100 to bring his family to the game. But arena football players are just blue collar guys, right? They're not making a lot of money. So I felt that the connection between the fans and the players was unique because they were more peers. It wasn't like the athlete was like way up here. It was like, well, this guy, he's a school teacher or he's a construction worker and he makes the same amount of money as the arena football player. So I just felt like the bond was really deep. And the people who really love the Rattler fans are some of the best in league history. I mean, their commitment to the Rattlers and just the rowdiness at those games. I mean, some of my best memories are games there. In fact, the scariest moment I ever had, I haven't thought about this in a while. It was before I became friends with Cedric Bonner. He was the quarterback for the Rattlers. And this is when the Firebirds were in Indiana. And we went down there and we had a linebacker, Umar Muhammad, whose his helmet right on the knee of Ced Bonner, and Bonner was hurt. And my broadcast position was out in the stands. I wasn't like protected. And it was like a bee's nest. Fans were hot. I mean, they really thought that it was a dirty play. I thought it was a dirty play, and it knocked Ced out of the game. And the hostility towards the team because we had taken down their guy. I remember I was a little scared. Like I was a little like, I wasn't going to scream touchdown Firebirds very loud because I just felt like everyone there. And it was just an example of the intimacy of arena football where like the fans felt like Ced was their guy. And, Ced's one of my great friends. I got him in at the NFL Network on the arena games. I think he's one of the best broadcasters of arena football out there. He's going to be involved with the franchise, I think, in Billings. So like you're going to have some of the great guys who are a part of the Arena League are going to be a part of this revamped league. And I certainly think that the league would be smart to lean on guys like Ced Bonner to make the connections with new fans and new markets, because there's nobody better than Ced Bonner.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Because you and said, calling those arena bowls, man, back in the day, just such great chemistry that you guys had, and I love the fact that actually you guys are still calling some games even today. I think
Yeah,
on like
last year
Zoom
we
and
did
stuff.
2 college football games together. We just have a really natural chemistry. I think it comes from a deep respect for each other. Everybody on every team, you refer to the starting quarterback as QB1, but there's only one person who I refer to as QB1 wherever we are, and that's Ced. To me, he's the epitome of what I want my leader to be. He's a good guy. He's like a good person. His leadership skills are what you want in a leader. He lifts everybody up. And when you do a game with him, like he'll call out what he thinks is a bad decision, but does it in such a respectful manner, never makes it personal. He and I could sit down to do any sport. We've done college basketball together. I just love our conversations. And, the beauty for me, and it's a little different with some other partners, is because he's interested in what I have to say. So I love broadcasts where it's not like the play-by-play guys in one lane and he just tees up the other guy. I think at its best, there's a mutual respect. And Sid might say to me, Ari, what do you like here? What do you think they should do? And I think that kind of broadcast is better for the fans, where it's not just like each guy doing like a specific job. I think broadcasting at its best is a little bit more of a blend. And there's nobody that it's easier for me to do a game with than Ced Bonner. I mean, he's a class act. I love that guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Now it was kind of funny because the other day I was looking through the archives of YouTube, and I actually remembered this thing that I remember watching you do when I was a little kid. because I was so big into arena football. And he did this little online show called The Wolf's Den. I think it was on like the
Yes.
AFL's YouTube page. And I was watching it back, and it brought back all these memories of watching you talk about AFL news. You're doing these top five lists. Just such a fun time
And
when
then literally the crazy
watching
thing
those.
about it is we didn't really have any production money. So my friend Mike Fox, who was the video guy for the Philadelphia Soul at the time, he and I basically did it. I would just, I was so intimately involved in everything Arena League. Like I didn't have a teleprompter or anything. I just riffed, and then we added video to it. But I'd just be at the facility. In fact, one of my favorite episodes, my dog at the time, you can see like running behind me. But we basically created something out of nothing. And this, you're going to love the kicker to this story. In 2008, ESPN was considering hiring me to do the playoffs on ESPN. And the guy, Vic Moore from ESPN, when they ultimately decided to hire me, he said, you know what made me decide that you were the guy? He said, watching the Wolves Den. He's like, I wanted an insider's insider, someone who literally loved the league so much. I did that thing for free. So that show, the Wolves Den, that we did, I think for 2 seasons, that got me on ESPN, and that helped me end up doing Arena Bowl. So it's just another example of like, do the hustle, do the things you're passionate about, and hopefully some other opportunities will pop up.
Man, that's awesome. That is so awesome. Yeah, just many great memories of watching that show. So just to love
It was a
that.
lot of fun. And, I missed it when it went away because, it was going really well. We'd actually gotten a sponsor towards the end of the 2008 season. Miller Lite became the sponsor, and I didn't actually get any money from it, but it was like the Wolves Den presented by Miller Lite. And I thought, this is as good as life will ever be. I've got a sponsored show that's my own creation. I only talk about what I wanted to talk about. And, I felt like it connected me with the players and coaches because, I'd see them on a week-to-week basis at the games, and they would watch the Wolves Den, and there wasn't anybody else doing anything like it. And one of the things about the Arena League that I think made it special for me is that, when you're working at the highest levels of sports, sometimes guys aren't that excited to sit down with a media member. But the arena guys, because they didn't get as much coverage and they knew that I was one of them, they always made time for me. If I was like, hey, I want to have a chat before the game, I want to do this, they'd always be like, whatever you want. So I got really fortunate that, Mike Daly was the head coach in Albany. He said, be one of those kind of people who cares so much about something that people are like, what's up with that guy? Like, why does he love it so much? Like, don't be scared to go all in on things. And so that's what I did with the Arena League. And all these wonderful things happened because I went all in. And it wasn't like, I didn't treat it as some like smaller, like nothing sport. I treated it like it was the Super Bowl. And that ended up really, I credit arena football was the most important thing I did to set up my career. And frankly, I'd still be doing it if it was in the form that it was before. I would have never left had the league not gone under. I guarantee I'd still be calling the Philadelphia Soul games, or I'd be with another team, because there was nothing more fun than traveling around the country, because we were mainly in NBA cities, and we played in like cool cities. That one of the best days of every year was when the schedule came out, and you'd be like, well, where are we going to go this year? So, picking your weekends. So we're going to get to go to Nashville. We're going to get to go to Phoenix. So yeah, the Arena League was a really, really special time. And I've never been able to quite capture that same kind of feeling. But it goes back to what I was saying, that, enjoy the journey, because it's those moments that I got a feeling, 50 years from now, if I'm still hanging around, I'll still be talking about the Arena League or the moments doing St. Rose basketball. And I'll be more than I'll be talking about all the network stuff I've done, where, again, you want to do well, you want to be professional, but you're not as emotionally connected to the outcome.
Yeah. I mean, I can relate to that. I mean, personally, I don't think I'd be the sports fan I am today without growing up with the Desperados, and just
Yeah.
growing that connection to them, and the Vigilantes as well in Dallas. Just those memories, I think, are just some of the strongest of my entire sports fandom.
Well, it all starts for us, in different ways, whatever you're sort of exposed to, whatever hooks you. When I was a little kid, before we moved to Wisconsin, I'm still a Philly professional sports fan. Like, it's never changed. I'm still an Eagles, a Phillies, a Sixers guy. And, even as being like a little kid, I can remember when, Dr. J and the Sixers like lost in the NBA finals. I was 6. They lost to Bill Walton and the Trailblazers in the 77 finals. And like, I cried and cried and cried. When Dr. J retired after, I believe it was the 85 season, they lost to the Bucks in the playoffs when he was retired, in the fetal position crying. And people might think, well, this guy's nuts. Well, no, I think that's the best part of life, is when you actually allow yourself to be completely emotionally invested in the outcome of something, because it's just more fun to care, right? You can cover a lot of things where you just go and be a professional, but there's nothing better than, I will say, on the Chiefs game was the first time in a long time, because I was working for a team in a game that mattered. Like, I was pretty crushed when the game was over. When I left Lambeau, like I was pretty salty, not like in an angry way, but just like sad. Like I just wanted it to be the perfect game because I might never get to do it again. So yeah, I'd say to anyone who's ever considering doing this, falling in love with it and being deeply connected to people, I'd say go all in. Good things will come.
Yep, 100%. Now, I do want to mention this that I was kind of reading up on. I want to mention your time with the Louisville Cardinals, getting to call games out in Louisville, just getting to be a part of that college environment and the culture there in Louisville. What was that like?
Well, it really was an eye-opening experience because I never really worked in college sports except doing the radio at St. Rose in Albany for 4 years. So coming to Louisville, they had just joined the Big East at the time. The local ABC affiliate had won the rights to the games that weren't on ESPN, and they wanted to bring in someone new. So it was exciting. Like I came down there and, I was hosting the Bobby Petrino show because he was the head football coach at the time. And Rick Pitino was the basketball coach, and the basketball team had just come off a Final Four. So I hosted both shows and did play-by-play for the local broadcast. And it was both good and it was challenging because I wasn't from there. I felt like a lot of the fans are like, well, who's this guy? Like, it took a little while for the fans to accept that, I pronounced the city right, that it's Louisville, that it's not Louisville, like little things like that. It took a while to feel like they accepted me as one of their own. But yeah, I did 4 years there. Petrino was there for just 2. Pitino was there for all 4. And, I learned a lot. Rick is, can I say this the right way? He was not particularly easy to work with because he's got so much on his mind, and he had his guy who was already the host of his coach's show. So they actually had 2 hosts and Rick. And it wasn't until my 3rd year that I felt like Rick was interested in anything I had to say. But it was a good learning experience for me to realize that some people at the very top, it takes longer to impress upon them that I was going to be professional and do the work. So it kind of opened my eyes that, everyone wasn't going to love you. And that it did take some time in Louisville. And then after even my 4th year there, I had already moved here, and I actually commuted myself back the last year because I just was like, I can't stay at Louisville forever. There was no growth there because all their biggest games were picked up by major networks. So I was just doing the games that were sort of the leftover games. And that's when I remember sitting in my place in Louisville, and I decided I got to leave. I got to go to LA right now. So it was during my 4th year there that I moved out here. So that was like my last stop before I came here. I will say that there were some magical moments, like Marquette playing Louisville in basketball, a Big East game. It was an overtime game. My parents came down for it. I had a bunch of friends from Madison who came. That was the best Louisville moment I had. And just being at Freedom Hall, this legendary place. I'm calling the games with Bob Valvano, who's Jimmy's younger brother. And, I just learned so much about basketball at that time. And it kind of set me up for success, in college basketball and college football after that. But yeah, Louisville was a hard place to feel the love. And by the time I was getting ready to leave, that had finally happened. But it was a great experience, and it was an important step for me along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's and I've actually been to that town before. It's a pretty cool town. They got like the what is
Yeah.
it? Was it the Louisville Slugger stuff? It got all
Yeah, the
that.
Louisville Slugger, museum is there. The Muhammad Ali Museum is
Hmm.
there. I never got to go to the Yum Center, the new basketball arena, but I was there as that was happening. But being at Freedom Hall, I mean, Freedom Hall looks great on TV, but it's really when they weren't playing basketball in it, they'd have like, cattle shows and things. It was really like there would be like dirt and farm and horse manure and stuff just outside the arena. So it definitely wasn't what I expected it to be. But the outstanding sports information director there, Kenny Klein, was a huge asset to me. An ESPN announcer was struggling to get there due to weather, and he went to ESPN and said, our guy's good enough to do it. So it's kind of a crazy story. I actually got paid a full rate, but the guy got there like 20 minutes before the game. So I got paid to get ready for the game, but I actually didn't do the game on ESPN. But there were some good times in Louisville, but that was the time where I realized that, I really wanted to be in Southern California, and I just wasn't going to wait around anymore. So that was a huge moment where I decided to just bet on me and move out here because, in terms of the national stuff, you really need to be in a big market. You can't be in Louisville and expect, to get big assignments. So coming out here and then, building a life out here, that's probably the thing I'm most proud of is that, I wasn't scared to come back to the number 2 market and try to make it happen.
Mhm. Now, as I mentioned at the top of the interview, you've been able to work the Olympics, which is such an amazing experience. So I got to ask, London and Rio, what are your favorite memories from those times? Just being around those cultures, exploring those places, and of course, getting to connect with, people there.
Well, it's interesting that so before I did either Olympics, there used to be an NBC network called Universal Sports that did Olympic sports all year round every year. So what they did is they assigned me to a bunch of different Olympic sports over a 3-year period. I mean, I did 3 full seasons of World Cup rowing. I did like slalom canoe racing, which is like a kayak in like rapids going around gates. So I did all these different things. I did a triathlon. And I found out I was going to get an Olympic assignment, but you didn't know what it was. And I thought, wow, I mean, there's a broad range. What sport am I going to get? And I remember when they told me that I was getting table tennis, I was like, great, we can do that right now. Like, I don't need, like, I know all the rules. I've done a couple of years of it. So that was huge for me to just have a sport that I love doing. I mean, I have a table tennis in my garage, so it's a sport near and dear to my heart. It's one of those sports. It's much different than any other sport that I do. I had a lot of people who didn't even know I was working as a sports broadcaster that I grew up with who watched the Olympics. It's just different. They say that like the audience who watches the NFL and the NBA is not the same audience who watches the Olympics. So from that perspective, it was great. And then I guess my favorite part was all the announcers from different sports. We all dined in the same place. So they had a place with all these different food stations. So you'd be sitting in a room and you might be talking with Lisa Leslie, who's one of the great women's basketball players of all time, Shep Messing, who is a great goalie. So all these different analysts. And then the nice part for me is play-by-play announcers are never together. We're never at the same thing. So for the Olympics, all these other play-by-play guys, you're all there. So the spending time together when you weren't on the air with all these incredible athletes and these other amazing announcers, that was the best part. And leads me to one of the most significant moments during the 2016 Olympics. I had dinner twice with John Wertheim, who's the executive editor of Sports Illustrated. He does a ton of stuff for Tennis Channel. He's one of the most respected guys. Well, over the course of 2 dinners, by the end of the second one, he's like, Ari, you know so much about tennis. Like, why don't you work in tennis? I was like, there's nothing I want to do more. I was a tennis player growing up. I just wasn't good enough to, have a real career out of it. So I had been sending emails and phone calls to Tennis Channel for probably 7 or 8 years at that time. It's based here in LA. And because John Wertheim told me, he's like, look, use my name in the next email you send. Well, they responded then when I said John Wertheim told me to reach out. And now I've worked at the Tennis Channel. I'm going in my 7th season. So being at the Olympics, being around these other incredibly successful announcers actually led to me. The thing that I love doing the most right now is the tennis stuff because I love tennis. I don't need to read a media guide to tell you about the players because I've been watching the whole time. I was a failed wannabe professional tennis player. So it's just an example of during all these things, the relationships, the people that you meet. And the Olympics is sort of unlike anything else. Now I'm actually, I know I'm being considered to come back to do my 3rd Olympics next summer in Paris. And my goal is actually, I really want to do tennis. Now I don't know if I'll make that jump from table tennis to tennis, but it makes you feel good that you're even being considered because there is nothing else like the Olympics. It's truly that and the World Cup to me are the truly global sporting events where the whole world is engaged, right? And the Olympics is near and dear to my heart, and I'm trying and hoping to get a 3rd one.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. I hope you hope you get on the Paris stuff because I've been to Paris before and it's a pretty cool city. A lot of awesome stuff there. But isn't that so cool how the Olympics ends up leading to your stuff with the Tennis Channel? I think that's so great about the industry is that you're doing one thing and then that leads to another thing and then that leads to another thing.
It really is. And one thing, I try to stress to young people that are interested in this career is it's not like a straight path. So let's say you want to be a doctor. You're like, oh, I'm going to go to undergrad and I'll be pre-med. And then I'm going to go to medical school and then I'll do my residency. And then hopefully you'll be a doctor somewhere. Our career path is nothing like that. Where you're going to go, all the different cities you're going to live in, the different sports. And I think at an early age, I learned that even though I thought of myself as a football, basketball guy, and purely in play-by-play is that I open myself to do different things. I've been a sideline reporter for, NFL, for other things. I did sideline for arena and I actually love doing sideline for arena because I can actually be on the field while the game is happening. So just the willingness to try sports that you didn't really know much about. And it's a great thing for your brain to try to like learn all the jargon of a new sport and try to be able to talk about the sport the way the people who work in it do. So just being open-minded to trying lots of different things. And then it's led to all these different experiences. I mean, the whole way the Olympic thing started at Universal Sports was because the Arena League didn't play that season in 2009. And I was desperately looking for work. And the first assignment they gave me, I was in Glendale in a studio with AJ Malesko calling the Women's World Ice Hockey Championships that were in Finland. I'm watching on a 20-inch monitor, and I remember it was like Norway against Sweden, maybe. I mean, the names were super tough. You know, they're in the corner battling for the puck. I'm like, look at AJ. I'm like, how the heck do you know? And she's like, just let it breathe. You don't have to like describe every single moment and everybody. So that was my first ever sort of Olympic experience. And it was just calling it off a monitor with this amazing former Olympian. And she and I have remained friends. We have the same agent. So there's just all these different stories along the way. And, you know, it's actually fun for me to do things like this because it reminds me of all these like really exciting, fun moments. Because, you know, on the daily, you're preparing for whatever assignment is next. But it's fun to look back and think about all the different experiences along the way.
Oh, wow, that's awesome. Yeah, and I'm so glad that you know AJ because I've listened to her like call like NHL games and stuff,
Yeah.
doing color analysis on that, and she does a magnificent job. So I think it's so cool.
So it was early in her career. She hadn't been, you know, she had still been playing. So in 2002, I think was her last Olympics. So she won it in 98, and then they didn't win it in 2002. Canada won. And then she and I, this was in 2009. So she'd been done playing for maybe 7 years at that time. And she's so great. She's just super cool. You could say anything to her. She's got that like athlete locker room kind of thing. So we actually had this thing when we were together. She actually did a summer Olympics. She did field hockey. So I was doing table tennis. We were there. And again, she won a gold medal, but I used to always call her my favorite silver medalist just to jab at her. And she like loved it. Like some people don't like that kind of humor. AJ is the best, and she's really good. And the fact that she as a woman is an analyst in the NHL, that tells you all you need to know, right? The level of respect that's there for her. She's, you know, it's not like she's a flash in the pan. She's been doing NHL games now for years. And yeah, I'm hoping maybe, you know, if I get Paris, she'll be back there doing something. I'll get to hang out with her again.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Now, of course, as we've been talking here, man, I mean, you've had just such an amazing career, and you've been able to do a variety of just super cool things in your career in broadcasting. But as you mentioned actually earlier, you're also a proud father. You've been able to raise two kids, grow a family. Just, what has that whole experience, meant to you?
Well, I always wanted to have a family, but Sam, one of the things that's a struggle as a young broadcaster, it's not just sort of your lack of income. It's you don't know how long you're going to be somewhere, right? So I had a very serious relationship in Albany, and then I moved to Indianapolis, and eventually, it's not like I could afford to move her. So that relationship went away. In Indianapolis, I had a very serious partner, Lisa. We're still friends to this day. I moved to Louisville and Philadelphia. So it wasn't until I got here and I knew I wanted to stay in Southern California that, everything kind of fell into place. And I met my wife in the end of 2015. And my daughter was born in January of 2019 and my son in January of 2021. And, it's fun. I mean, last year I had them in at the Tennis Channel and they like had the headsets on and they got for the first time to kind of see what I do. And so, it makes me proud. I want to instill in them to find something that's your thing. Like, you don't need to follow me and do it, but find whatever it is your thing and just go all in on it. And, I was lucky. My mom and my stepdad, they loved being professors at Wisconsin. So I had role models that had found something that was their thing. Because you can go through life and have a job and that's fine. And you may get more satisfaction out of the things outside of your career. But I think to me, a more deeply meaningful way to spend your career is doing something that you're passionate about and something that you love. Because so many other benefits come from that. So I guess what I want to do with my kids is just kind of show them that have the courage to believe in yourself, have the courage to speak up when maybe nobody thinks you should, and then be willing to do the hard work and be willing to take some lumps along the way. And, if I'm fortunate to do this for another, I don't know, 15, 20, 25 years, I can picture them coming and being my stage manager at games and just so that they can get a feel of what it's like a day in the life for me. Because I just want to expose them to as many things as possible. And who knows, maybe one of them will either be an athlete or want to be a coach. And that would be something where I'd be, able to help them, at least give them introductions. But yeah, I just want my kids to grow up thinking that like life is full of possibilities and that we're fortunate that we we have the resources for them to pursue whatever it is they want to pursue. And so I just want them when they're older to be in a position like me, talking to somebody young like you and being as excited about their career as I am about mine.
Yes, 100%, man. Now my last question here is, this is a question that I love asking people, just, what would you say is the thing that you are most proud of in your career in broadcasting?
Well, look, there are accolades that come with it. I didn't even know that someone who did what I did could win an Emmy. And I'm fortunate that I won, two regional Emmys. And, obviously just the hardware looks cool. It shows. Doing two Olympics really has meant a lot to me. But to me, it really all goes back to arena football, because what I'm most proud of is that I became the guy in the league, right? Like, I came in as someone who had never worked in arena football in the summer of 1998. And, during 2010, 2011, 2012, moving on through there, I have worked more arena bowls than any other announcer in the history of the Arena Football League. And people who see what I do now may think that that's crazy, but that's what I'm most proud of, is that I was the AFL guy, that they wanted me on the Arena Bowl. And that meant everything to me. It still does. I get emotional thinking about it. There's this whole big America, and they can only have one guy do the play-by-play in the Arena Bowl, and they chose me. And that's because I went all in and I loved it. And I loved the people, and all those people that I know in arena football. If one of those guys showed up on the street, you'd see us bear hugging and telling stories. Like, it's the thing that touches my heart the most, is that I got to be the guy in arena football.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I'll tell you this, Ari, I would say you were definitely one of the voices of my childhood, and I will forever be thankful for that.
That's pretty cool. Well, I appreciate you sharing that with me.
Of course. Well, Ari, thank you so much for just letting me have this amazing opportunity to talk with you today. Just once again, truly an honor, and I'm just so thankful for this, truly.
Well, all I ever ask to someone who, I do one of these things with, is that you pay it forward. When you're in a position where someone wants to hear about your life and your career, that you make sure to make the time and do it for them. That's my only request. Pay it forward.
Hey, absolutely. And that is some fantastic advice, Ari. Hey, I just hope you have an amazing rest of your day. And just, once again, thank you so much.
Yep, it was a pleasure. I enjoyed it. It was a fun conversation.